And now, ladies and gentlemen, the Sobros Network proudly brings to you some in-depth movie discussion with our resident film critic, Brandon Vick.
Happy evening, everyone. The Vick's Flicks podcast is here.
Welcome back for another episode of the Vick's Flicks podcast right here on Sobros Network. Mine's right, ass is tight as we tackle the 2024 Nashville Film Festival here on the show today. It is year 9 of Sobros Network at the Nashville Film Festival. Almost a decade. Next year will be a decade covering the festival for our little corner of the internet. I am the host of the Vick's Flicks podcast, the EIC at Sobros Network. I don't know what I was about to say. I was about to say something.
Did you forget who you were?
I forgot who I was.
Where you are?
I'm Big Natural Stoney Keeley. You can follow me on Twitter at Stoney Keeley, at Stoney Keeley on TikTok, and at Stoney Keeley 615 on Instagram, because someone apparently has at Stoney Keeley on Instagram.
Really?
Yeah. And at Sobros Network everywhere else.
Wow.
So that's how you can get in touch with me. That other lovely voice that you hear happens to belong to our resident film critic. He is a board member of the Music City Film Critics Association and a member of the Southeastern Film Critics Association. He is Mr. Big Shot Brandon Vick. Brandon, how are you doing today?
Man, I'm doing so good. I love Wednesdays.
Does it feel at all to you like the Nashville Film Festival kind of snuck up on us this year?
Yeah.
It's a little earlier than it's been in recent years, which I don't know when they made the switch to October. It's been since we've been covering the festival, because I know
A few years, 2 or 3 years ago?
No, it's
they moved
longer
it
than
from
that.
April to October?
It was in May in 2018, because that's when we were in the parking lot of a wrestling show trying to interview a filmmaker that ended up not answering the phone. But
Yeah.
that happens. It's not a big deal. But I know it's
Ridley Scott, I think it was.
It's 2018 when that happened. And then in 2019, I remember going to see the Joey Ryan documentary, which, that aged poorly.
Yeah.
2019, I remember going to that with Outspoken Owen, and we ate at Applebee's.
Well, that's probably right, though. 3 years? 2 or 3 years when they got into the fall festival?
Buddy, that was 5 years ago. 2019 was 5 years ago.
Oh, was this all in October?
Yeah.
I thought this was in April or May, you said.
Oh, no. Sorry.
That's why I was like, oh, well, if you did that in 2019, then that's probably right. 3 years.
Oh, it was October.
I see.
That it was, well, actually,
Damn,
you know what?
has
Hang
it
on.
been
I've got
gone that long?
I've got the credentials still. Yeah. October 3rd through 12th, 2019.
Wow.
So it's been 5 years, but October 3rd through the 12th is a lot different than September 21st, which is when I got to actually go to Green Hills. And it was sweaty as hell. I
kind of like the end of September, though.
I like it when it's cooler outside.
Yeah, that's Tennessee's fault.
Yeah.
That's not,
So
but
what?
I like the September. It was a bit, if it was nicer.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's so damn cold in the theater that it's like winter.
People are going to get sick.
Yeah.
Going from
I
hot
would
to
literally
cold.
was wearing like a sweater.
But then I stepped
outside and drenched in sweat.
We are such boomers.
So I took it off, showed my pierced nipples, sat outside and had a beer.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
But no, what did you say? Year 9 for Sobros, year 55
of the festival
for
itself.
Nashville Film Festival. Wow.
Yeah. I kind of feel like we were critical of the programming last year, but I feel like this year was a major rebound. I saw one film that I just really didn't care for. And then, granted, I only got to see, at this point, 6. We're recording, and I still have screeners to get to, but I'm a little behind because it is football season,
That's all right.
too.
It's actually, technically, the film festival hasn't ended yet.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, the closing night party is still going on tonight as we're recording this. But I feel like a hit rate of 5 out of 6, just for my numbers, is pretty good. But I've talked to you, and you've got a lot of pretty decently rated films this year, too. Do you think it's safe to say that this year was a rebound after kind of a down year last year?
Yeah, I think it always starts, and I mean, it happens at every festival. Once they release the films, once they release their official selections, you either start getting excited or judgmental, both. But, and I know, and I get it, it's Music City. I mean, and there was, and I forgot what somebody, I don't know if it was Nashville Scene, I don't know, but somebody was talking about how they had a lot of music documentaries this year. And I think that's the one thing I noticed is that.
Well, that's been a trend that's been developing over the last 3 years.
Yeah.
We've seen it.
Yeah. Especially
lean into the Music City
opening
aspect.
night, closing nights are typically those, which they had a double headliner but it was music. And then the one that closed, I think, was the Black Keys documentary that's closing tonight. And I get it. They're embracing it. I don't know if they've officially come out and embraced it, but they should because it's becoming quite clear.
Yeah.
But with that said...
Well, and even a couple of years ago, I went to see Spirit Halloween at the Franklin Theater.
I know. I almost watched that. It's on Amazon Prime now.
Listen, man, if you
it looks dumb.
If you go into it like this is going to be like a 1990s Disney Channel Halloween movie, you'll enjoy it. If you go into it expecting, I don't know, Sleepy Hollow or The Lighthouse or fine spooky cinema, you're probably going to be disappointed. But
I mean, it can't be worse than Hubie Halloween.
I love that movie, and yes, it's along the same lines as Hubie Halloween. Yeah, but even that, we were there for the Q&A, and after the movie filmed or the movie screened, the people got up there that made the film and were talking, answering questions. They're in the music industry. These are people from the music industry, funding passion projects and stuff. So you see, even
there's always a connection,
even in the stuff that's not directly related to the music industry, it seems like there's still industry people behind some of the stuff. I'm not saying that's everything.
Or there's Nashville. They live in Nashville. Yeah. There's a homegrown
But I think
connection.
It's clear to see what you illustrate is that the music industry does seem to have a growing presence at the Nashville Film Festival over the last few years.
Yeah. But with that said, I saw better films this year than I did last year. No, I don't know if that's just a kudos to me and my selection.
Like you were just on it.
I'm just was picking all the best ones and
a good general manager assembling a roster in the NFL. Yeah. You're making you're hitting all the draft picks.
I saw 15 films.
Okay.
And
it's a big number for
and only 2 of them got less than 3 stars.
Damn, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying though.
That's pretty good.
Pretty high percentage. The lowest I went is I think I went 1.5 on one that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, me too.
Everything else was, I had 1 2.5, and then everything else was 3.5. I had a 4-star in there too.
The other 2, and I have a 2.5, but it's the one that you haven't watched yet.
Yeah.
I didn't give any 4s except I could go back and probably give 1 because after seeing it on Sunday, and it's been a few days, I really liked it. But there's quite a few that really, there's not a huge gap in between a lot of these films. I was going to share my ranking on my Letterboxd ranking of what I saw, but I mean, there really is. I mean, the difference between number 3 and number 8 is not, I mean, it's not that much. And a lot of them are 3.5.
Yeah.
Most of them are 3.5.
Yeah. Another year of fantastic media relations people.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, their team is always great. Getting back to you.
Carson Brown.
Yeah.
Shout out to Carson Brown. Yeah. He was very nice. I bugged him a little bit, but he delivered, and he was very nice about it. And when I was able to get a couple of screeners because I wasn't going to be able to see them in person, so he was able to help me out. And while I was at the festival, I was emailing, and anyway, he did a tremendous job. Yeah. I don't know if his boss is listening, but I would at least pay him $13 an hour.
Okay, good.
At least
we're starting.
I don't know what the starting pay is, but I thought that's a pretty good number. Minimum wage is still what, $3.40
in Tennessee, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but no, he did a great job. He was
Well, it felt
always
like
answered and always delivered. I've had
anytime-
great experience, by the way, with Carson and Bree.
Yeah, they've both been great.
Yeah, I hope they never change
Same
this
here.
team because
Same here.
they're on top of it.
Yeah, and it's not to throw shade, like we're petty, holding on to grudges for years, but I think the team before Carson and Bree,
Yeah, they were a joke.
I wasn't gonna go that far, but it was a little difficult to obtain information, and they've always been a fantastic help in us planning our coverage, because you and I both have pretty busy schedules, and it can be pretty difficult the way that the Nashville Film Festival sets up, with multiple screenings going at multiple venues at the same time.
Yeah.
We both mentioned, like, we had to miss My Old Ass because it was screening the same time as Saturday night.
Miss Jazzy that has Lily Gladstone in it.
Yeah.
Had to make some time to eat and bathe.
But for the most part, if there are available screeners to get to us, we've been able to communicate with the Film Fest team, like, hey, we're not going to be able to see both. Can you help us here? And then you get those links in your inbox, and it's just been fantastic. I mean, we've worked with a lot of film festivals. I've worked with, like, the NFL, the SEC, the Senior Bowl, and there are some media teams that are kind of difficult to pin down and get help. But I would say the Nashville Film Festival and the Senior Bowl, the Reese's Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama, probably the best two units that I've worked with personally. And that always makes it so much better for us. And I mean, to be honest with you, when we look at maybe some other trips we are trying to take later in the year to cover other festivals, and how we're trying to allocate our resources, because Sobros Network is not making $1 million a year for us to fly all over the country to a million different film festivals. But when you are trying to figure out your work plan for the quarter, and you see something like the Nashville Film Festival pop up, and you don't know, are we going to have time to really do this justice? It does make our decision to put the work in a little bit easier, knowing that they have great people to work with that help us make it happen.
Yeah. And even if they can't do something, I mean, as long, and they tell you, that's all that's all we're looking for. But, as you were saying that, I'm thinking, I've been thinking about this all wrong. You're saying I should ask Carson to send us to other festivals.
Ask Carson
and traveling accommodations.
Ask Carson if he can get us into Sundance.
I say, Carson, I don't know if you need to talk to anybody, but I'm trying to go to Sundance.
Yeah. Or wait, is Sundance the one that doesn't offer media credentials? You still have to pay for a badge?
Here's the thing, and I've seen press. I think you're talking about Telluride.
Telluride, the Colorado.
But they do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I've seen people that go and take pictures, and they got badges, and they say press.
Well, yeah, but you have to pay for them.
Oh.
Like, they'll offer you the press badge, but you have to pay for them. And then we looked at the badges, and it's like $750 for a badge, and I'm like,
that's nuts to me,
bro.
That, by the way, that's just to see movies.
Yeah, that's not the travel, the accommodation.
No, but
dining.
What if Sundance ends up going to Cincinnati?
Dude, I'm gonna lose my shit because I love Cincinnati. It's a good city.
I like parts of Cincinnati.
I
like the zoo. But wouldn't that be awesome?
That would be awesome. I don't know that they would let us in, but
no. But my God, if we could, and then the travel's not nearly as bad as trying to go to. I know it's going to be back in Utah or Boulder, Colorado.
Yeah,
I don't think it's going to. But first they were talking about Atlanta, Louisville, and I'm like, oh my.
That would have been sick if it was.
But anyway.
But hey,
haven't been there, so I'll ask Carson.
Hats off to Carson.
But yeah, no, they are great. Great.
What do you think about the multiple venue setup?
I think it's tough. I typically
like the venues.
The venues are great.
Yeah.
I usually am only going to pick one of that day. If I'm going to drive and park, I'm probably not moving.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
And if anybody that lives in Nashville knows, from just for instance Green Hills to the downtown Franklin Theater, that's a haul.
It is, yeah.
And just to try and I'm not even thinking about trying, like, if you dare seeing one at one place, get to another, and then trying to come back.
Yeah.
I don't think it's possible.
I haven't seen a film at Soho House yet, and I'm really intrigued by that because I've been in there before.
Yeah.
I've been in there too.
It's a very luxurious home theater.
Okay.
Is what the feeling is. They have these chairs with these little lamps, and they have where they're like little footstools,
Yeah.
and there's blankets in them.
Oh man.
Yeah, I've been able to go to a few press screenings, and that Glass Onion was one of them, and it's very
See, now-
nice. But the only
Man.
thing is, it's not like a huge screen. It really is sort of like a home theater, a very nice home theater, because the sound quality is great, but the layout and stuff, it's really unreal. But yeah, it's cool. So if you ever, it may be next year if they have one screening at one, just go.
Just go.
Whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Well, that was
skip
where
whatever.
my
That's
old
where,
ass was,
which
and I wanted to see that.
yeah. But hey, you can see it tomorrow if you wanted to.
Yeah, it's playing in Providence.
Starts tomorrow.
Yeah, maybe I will. Damn, I hadn't thought about that. I don't know when.
Bring a
I'm gonna have
little
time.
lamp and a blanket.
Yeah, I don't know when I'm going to have time for that. Who am I kidding? All right, well let's get into the festival. All right,
Yeah.
let's talk about the films that we saw, and let's start with the big one. Let's start with Saturday night. Jason Reitman was there in the
flesh.
in the studio,
Mm-hmm.
in the theater. I mean,
Yeah. What?
Your thoughts on that experience?
I thought it was cool. It was kind of a last minute addition, I think within a week or so of the festival. Also, the casting director, which I forgot his name, but he...
John DePodesta, I think. I was actually efforting his actual name instead of just guessing, but then we went there, so here we are.
Well, he did like the Batman trilogy for Christopher Nolan.
Christopher Nolan, yeah.
Like he's a big deal. But yeah, it was cool to hear them talk about it. I wish that the audience got to ask some questions during the Q&A. But
yeah.
I hear that a lot of people felt that way because not everyone was pleased with the moderators' questions.
Is that right?
Yeah.
What are the streets saying?
Well, I
What
didn't really
you
have a
heard?
problem with that, but I think it's more of like, it's so, like they'll answer and they'll say, oh, absolutely. And then they'll just look at their paper and go off the next one. Like it's not really a conversation.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like that with Linda Perry for a documentary I saw about her. But it was cool to see. It was cool to see him. If you don't know who Jason Reitman is, he is the son of Ivan.
Yeah.
Who, I mean, Ghostbusters for one, but did a lot of other stuff. But he was, what did they say? I think he's been nominated 4 times for an Oscar. He's done Juno. He's done Up in the Air. He's done the Ghostbusters Afterlife. He's done.
Thank you for smoking.
Yep. Tully.
Yeah.
Young Adult.
John Papsadera was the casting
That's
director.
him.
My bad, John.
He seemed nice, all decked out in denim.
Yeah.
Denim. Remember that old Navy commercial?
My
That keyboard.
my wife smacked me on the way out of the theater because I was talking about the film and he was behind us walking to his car.
Oh.
And I was going to say loudly enough for him to hear, oh, the movie was okay, but man, that casting was just perfect.
Man.
Just to see if he would react. But my wife smacked me and said, "You don't talk about the film." And I'm like, what's wrong? Like she thought I didn't know he was there. That was the whole purpose of the joke. I was going to try and throw a funny at him. And
you should have turned around and be like, oh my God, I didn't know you were there.
yeah, that was
Unzip your jeans.
it's like Milton Berle.
Yeah. God. But yeah, it was really cool. And that really was the biggest film there.
That's why, and you know what?
With the most buzz.
Like you got to stay plugged into it because it feels like there is something like that. There is at least one screening like that at every Nashville Film Festival where it just pops up.
They
and
do.
All of a sudden,
and
like,
my old ass, that one, and a couple of others were all thrown in there.
Yeah.
I think the highly anticipated Amber Alert was mentioned. So
Yeah.
you gotta keep up with your emails.
So we got tickets right away. My wife wanted to go, so I bought her a ticket so she could come sit with us. She loved the film. It was a 4 out of 5 for me. I really dug the chaotic vibes. You know, it really comes across as a frenetic, fast-paced story. and somehow contained within this one studio, Reitman kind of builds what feels to me like an odyssey, like Lorne Michaels going on a journey from point A to point B. And the way the film ends is just, it's perfect to me. Like, there were a few characters that I kind of felt like made the film feel a little bloated. My issue, namely with Billy Crystal being in the film, because
Hold on. Make sure our audience knows it's not the real Billy Crystal.
The Billy Crystal character being in the film made it feel like they just had to get Billy Crystal on there because he was a part of that cast. And like, we've got to show Billy Crystal in this film. But I really didn't feel like his character added much to the tension, the plot, or the development.
But I don't even think. But I think,
like, in other words,
was he on the first episode? Because parts of me thinks part of that backstage sounds like he didn't.
Yeah, but like my issue being like, you probably could have cut this film a little bit shorter and just pulled Billy Crystal out of the thing altogether, and it would have been just fine. Like. That character was one, some of the stuff like the arc that they do where Neil like gets super high, and I know people were talking about how funny it was, but I'm like, it really like served nothing to the story. So there were a couple of little nitpicks that I felt kind of got us off the rails a little bit, but when we were looking at the night through Lauren's eyes and following him around, that was a sweet spot to me that really made this a really interesting, fast-moving plot, but also the George Carlin character too. When they shoehorned George Carlin in, fantastic impression of George Carlin from the actor, but there's a lot of it that just kind of feels like,
and that's Matthew Rhys.
Yeah, we're just doing this to have George Carlin in this movie.
Yeah.
And
but I see why you would include him because he's the first host.
Well,
ever.
For sure, yeah.
But I didn't mind. I'll be honest. I liked that. They didn't show him that often. They would make references in his hotel room, in his dressing room. But I didn't really, especially the end where he comes out to actually kind of go over some of the stuff. But I want to speak, because Reitman, when he was there talking about how like, you're not going to have time to check your phone. I think it was even talked about where he kind of explains it as like a thriller. Yeah. And I totally get it. But I don't think it's as... I just don't think it's that like high octane driven thrill ride, because there's a lot of times where I feel like we kind of like we're stalling a bit. Okay. I think there are some parts where like I didn't mind the Billy Crystal, but it's almost like I don't even know, like I barely got why they were even there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
it felt a little bloated.
Yeah. And I think that's also why like some things that happen, like some of the conversations, it's not that they're not important, but it almost just seems like, I know some things kind of felt repetitive, like it already been mentioned. I love Willem Dafoe, but sometimes he would kind of come in and I just thought, what? Okay. Like we get it. But I know one time I felt it, and maybe because it was kind of towards the end, but like the whole there's an ice skating scene with Belushi, and that just didn't like, why are we, like, I'd rather us be back on those 2 floors at Rockefeller Center. Like, I don't really care that much and so, now that's not to say that there isn't that kind of frantic chaos, and to me, that's what's so, I thought that's what's so attractive to it from the beginning, like as soon as the movie starts.
Yeah, and I mean, it just drops you right in.
And that's what Reitman said. He kind of just wanted you to drop in and be like, okay, like we all, in some degree, know the players. Most people know who Chevy Chase is, John Belushi, Dan Aykroyd. But, there were things where I thought some were kind of like, were like the spiritual part of that character. And then other times I thought there were caricatures. Yes.
There we go.
Or imitations.
Yeah.
That didn't come across as, I guess, fully developed characters. Like it was like they did watch them on TV and thought, oh, this is what they do.
Yeah.
I felt like Belushi was like that. I didn't really get a whole lot from Belushi. I don't, I kind of felt that way with Andy Kaufman, which I know he's a strange bird anyway.
Yeah.
But I felt like that was one. I didn't really get much of Jim Henson. I'm saying like I get why he's there, but it was just about them disgracing his puppets, which I know they didn't get along.
Yeah, but that's an interesting choice as well to have Nicholas Braun play both Jim Henson and Andy Kaufman. It kind of makes the whole thing feel a little gimmicky to begin with.
Well, and Reitman in the Q&A said basically the SNL cast get to do all these characters. Why can't his movies?
Yeah. As a way of like, it's a wink and a nod to the source material, so to speak. But then I also felt like, and I think it's one of those like, there was a reference to not what they do, but who they are. I didn't get that from, like Belushi was mainly the Bumblebee thing, which I understood, but Jane Curtin, Gilda Radner, I couldn't even tell you what they even did. Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I liked the Belushi stuff because I felt like that's kind of what him
and Chevy, I know with their stuff.
Like, I'm okay with the Belushi stuff because I feel like there are a lot of people that just see him as what he was on screen.
Yeah. I feel like he's like the original, like the way Chris Farley is kind of perceived. He's always wild and crazy. He's the Animal House character.
Yeah, but then if you actually like read about the guy, there was, I think, the line in the movie that mentioned like he thinks he's going to be the next Brando.
Oh yeah.
And
when
that's
he's in the
kind
mirror,
of like how he was like he took himself very seriously, and so I was glad. I didn't know how they were going to approach him in this film, but I felt like there was a little more of real life in his character than some of the other ones.
I also think for me, the Lorne Michaels character. And so that was Gabriel LaBelle, who played a somewhat kid version of Spielberg in The Fabelmans. He's really good. I think he's phenomenal as Lorne Michaels.
Yeah.
I think he's the perfect person, that a young Lorne Michaels just trying to get to 11:30. I thought that another young one, the Cooper Hoffman.
I thought Cooper Hoffman was great.
Playing Dick Ebersol.
The scene in the stairwell between he and
I think that's
Lorne
the
Michaels.
best scene.
Yeah, I do too.
The best scene. And the other guy, I know he played the Riddler. And
Corey Michael Smith,
yes,
who played Chevy Chase, knocked it out of the park.
And I felt like is a great example of, you can kind of see the resemblance, but I feel like that attitude and ego is there, but it's not him trying to be like just an impression of Chevy Chase.
Yeah.
And I felt like that's what some of these characters were. Or I
thought,
hate to say it, but a lot of the female characters, besides maybe Rachel Sonnett, who was, I guess, married to Lorne Michaels, they didn't get in. Like, I felt like they didn't get much.
Yeah. I thought Dylan O'Brien was great as Dan Aykroyd.
I liked him as Dan Aykroyd too.
Yeah.
I liked that, the way he kind of was cut loose, and then you could kind of see the kind of guy he was around the ladies.
I feel like this film is kind of, to SNL fans, I think this is an example of how you do fan service the right way.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Because it is an interesting story. You get a cast of legendary characters. I do feel like there were some things that were kind of shoehorned in that made the movie feel a little bit bloated, but I'm not going to blame them for wanting to get Billy Crystal in. Not going to.
Well, especially, what is it, 74?
75, I think.
So, but I'm like, It is interesting. And that's why I guess for me, I didn't mind the George Carlin, because if anybody, I think there's a lot of people probably don't even know who he is.
Yeah.
But that's what I agree. I didn't mind it. And it's still less than 2 hours. It's not super long, but you are talking about, it's a 110-minute movie about 90 minutes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's that you have, in so many instances, in so many scenes, this really fast-paced, fast-moving setting, and you're having these really tense conversations between Lauren and Willem Dafoe's character, and
there's a lot on the line with an hour and a half.
Chevy Chase and Milton Berle is just like, there's real tension.
Can we just say Milton Berle? So he's played by J.K. Simmons, who's been in quite a few of Jason Reitman's films. He is hilarious.
Yeah.
And there is a scene, and I won't reveal it here, but I really wish I could have asked Jason Reitman, did that really happen?
Yeah.
Did anything of that sort happen? And I pray it did.
So you have a movie that I feel like would have been better served if it was just that frenetic pace, the tension for like an hour and a half straight.
Yes.
But there are these moments with some of these characters that kind of feel like they are just there for fan service, so to speak, and they're not really serving moving the plot along. That kind of take you out of this thrill ride.
Yes, I think
totally
agree.
It's not that they're bad. I don't want to come across as like, oh,
no,
you cut these scenes, you got a good movie.
But that's exactly
you're on a roller coaster, and the roller coaster stops for a few minutes and then picks back up. And I think that's my issue with some of the characters and some of the ways that they were kind of shoehorned into the plot.
Yes, and I think that was ultimately my thing. But I really think the way it's done, the way that it looks, and feels. It feels like it's 1975, and like you said, you're thrown in here, and you're looking around. Just honestly, there's a lot of times where you can't believe your eyes that they got away with some of this shit.
Yeah.
I think it's one of Jason Reitman's best in quite a few years.
Sure.
So there's no question about that, and I did enjoy it. It's just some things I think he was trying to convey didn't necessarily come across that way to me.
Yeah.
I will say there was two things I thought were really interesting in this Q&A. There's a lot of stuff he said where I'm like, man, that didn't really like hit the way I think he thought it would. But there's things that happen where his film sort of reveals itself as an SNL show, where he's having certain things happen, and then they do a weekend update, and that's kind of in the middle of the show. And then he had two performances, which John Batiste, we found out he plays a character, but he also literally wrote the music while it was going on, made it up as he went, which I think a lot of it sounded great. But I love that little tip of the hat of like, oh, this is how it filmed. Two, and I was talking this with our buddy Dom, who's with Geek Vibe Nations, but also he's a Music City Film Critic Board member, part of Critics' Choice. When Reitman, and I think this goes to exactly what we're talking about as far as this like steady pace of just if Reitman would have gotten his wish and filmed that movie and as one continuous shot,
man,
I think it would have really felt as insane as that night I'm sure was.
Yeah.
I would like to see that version, because I think that really would be a on your toes, edge of your seat. What the fuck is going to happen next? Yeah,
absolutely. No disagreement there. It's still one of my favorites of the year so far. I did update my list with everything that I see, and I've got it in like 6th or 7th range.
Okay. I gave it 3.5 out of 5.
3.5?
Yeah.
Yeah. I go 4. I liked it. I feel like there is something to I liked how it felt like an odyssey. It felt like a journey in one room.
Yeah.
And I really liked the fan service of it. These are like legendary figures in Americana history, pop culture history, that we're kind of seeing the genesis, the birth of something that would go on to create.
It was revolution. I mean, it's mentioned
a legacy, a real legacy.
That it's revolutionary.
Yeah.
And nobody saw it that night. But here we are
And that's really interesting to be in the room in a way to
be a part of that.
A part of that
Yep.
is really cool. I really enjoyed that.
I totally agree.
All right, well, let's shift gears and talk about. Let's go to Griffin in Summer because that's what we kicked, or I kicked my day off with on Saturday. Getting to Green Hills for the 1:30 screening of that. I thought this was a pretty good. The way I described it, we were sitting at the bar having a beer after the screening. Felt like a really good festival movie. Like that's what you go to a film festival to see. There was the right blend of good story, interesting characters. There's humor sprinkled in. It does celebrate the independent, creative spirit in a way. All in all, I think they came together with a pretty good product. Your high level thoughts on Griffin in Summer?
I agree. It's a very kind of, I think, what you would imagine as a film festival indie comedy.
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
It's got the dry wit. I must say, it's basically about a 14-year-old who wants to be a playwright, but then meets this 25-year-old handyman, Brad, and it's a quirky kind of coming of age movie. And but the kid that stars in it as Griffin, Everett Blunk, he did great.
I thought so too.
I don't know if he's like that in real life, but he plays it perfectly as a kid that he only wants to focus on this. He doesn't call his mom. He calls her by her first name. He's very specific. He's very particular and wants these kids to be at their to read through the script at 8 a.m. on a weekend. But he's also not experiencing childhood at all.
Yeah.
And that's where Owen Teague comes in as Brad, as the handyman, who I think we all agreed sort of looked like an Austin Butler
they're going
replica.
Yeah, they're going for the he's the actor that will play Austin Butler in the biopic one day.
Yes, and he's the hero ape in the new Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Not that you would know that because he's in motion capturing.
Yeah.
But
I remembered him. I recognized him from Bloodline.
Oh, yeah.
He plays Danny's son in one of the later seasons.
Is Danny Chandler?
No, Danny is
Ben Mendelsohn?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. There's only two people I realized that were in it.
I think his name was Danny. I don't remember.
But Melanie Linsky's in it.
Yeah.
She's always great. I know she's found real I think she's always has found success, but I know Yellow Jackets is kind of the thing now. She plays Griffin's mom. Yeah. I really liked their relationship and exploring it.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that kind of holds it back, first of all, it's funny. It's funny from the opening scene when the two kids are doing the singing for the talent show. And then of course, Griffin comes in and it's a very adult themed
it's a scene from his play.
From his play that they're doing. It involves pills and abortions. So
drinking, alcoholism. Yeah.
But I felt like there was two things happening where they're trying to do a lot within 90 minutes, which is either Griffin kind of exploring his self and sexuality at a young age with Brad and trying to have this friendship, but also there is this family life at home that he's suffering from. And I feel like they kind of hint more at it than actually dive into it.
Yeah.
And then there's one scene where we actually see his father, and it doesn't quite hit the way it should. I didn't think it was as effective.
Sure, I would agree. Yeah.
So I do feel like story-wise, I think it's trying to juggle too much.
Yeah.
But I will say a lot of good performances. The comedy, it does work. It was
funny. It was a funny movie.
Some of the drama is fine. I think it works more as a comedy.
Yeah, sure.
Myself, but I thought it was pretty delightful for a movie I'd never heard of. That Catherine Newton shows up in it.
Nice surprise. Yeah.
So
I thought her character was funny.
But yeah, I think it's a nice indie film that I hope people see. But I do feel like it's one of those that it's just going to be one of those like, man, you know what? That was good at the festival, but then in a couple years it'll be like, what was?
I could see that getting some run on one of the streaming services. I think that would be a charming little movie.
Feels like an Amazon Prime.
Yeah, that sort of deal. I liked the themes that the film explored, like the whole coming of age thing, the angst of adolescence, growing pains at a time in your life when you're trying to figure out who you are. But I thought the dynamic between he and Owen,
Brad,
yeah, Owen's his real name. Between he and Brad brought an interesting parallel to the film, an interesting dynamic to the film where you don't see it in movies a lot. I don't feel, where this is a younger kid that maybe sees somebody doing something like what he wants to do. And there is a time in your life where you're like looking to older people to emulate, so to speak. And I felt like it kind of tapped into that, like Griffin kind of thinking, wow, he lives in the big city and he makes art, and like that's what I want to be. And I thought that was
your perspective is skewed because he's older and he has a crush on him, and it's like you said, seems to be he's there where Griffin wants to be, even though I don't think that's really the case, especially when Griffin sees one of Brad's last performances.
Yeah.
But there's those little things where it is kind of awkward, but that's your teenage years, and and it's kind of funny because it is kind of cliched in a way. I think they make it work, but he's kind of he is a handyman, pool boy.
Yeah.
But he's this uptight kid that almost like, I wish I could be him.
Yeah.
I wish I could kind of have that. And but it also goes in its way where he kind of loses his way, and really he does want to be a kid, but he doesn't know how. It's a case where, and we've seen this in a lot of films, where he wants to grow up too fast.
Yeah, for sure. I thought the film highlighted the importance of learning how to interact with people and kind of reaping what you sow in your relationships. I mean, he's really mean to, I think it's Tyler is the character's name. Really mean to the kid.
The
kid that he kicks out of the performance. Like, these are still your friends, and you should treat them with respect, and you should consider their feelings and things that they want. And that's ultimately a lesson that he learns by the end of the film. I thought that was a really good, heartwarming kind of nugget. You see the growth of the Griffin character.
Well, that's also where Abby Ryder Fortston is in. So she's in Are You There? God, It's Me, Margaret. She's sensational, but she's kind of the director of this play. But, you can tell everybody else is trying to satisfy him because he's a pretty demanding kid.
Yeah.
But I thought the way that they interacted and the way that their friendship was kind of being strangled because of how focused he was on this specific thing that she also liked, but that I think in his play and in life, I think there's this overall theme of collaboration.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So I thought it was great. It felt like there was a lot of kind of heavier themes and topics beneath the surface of a film that kind of hits all the right notes with its humor, with its comedy.
I agree.
And I go back to what I said to start the conversation. It's like, this is kind of really good festival hit.
It's sort of what you want it to be.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. Let's talk about Porcelain War, because man,
that's a doozy.
That is a documentary that follows a group of Ukrainian artists around who have stayed behind in Ukraine during the war, and I thought it was.
They go to the front lines. They're basically fighting.
Yeah, it was
the war.
Particularly fascinating to see how this group of people kind of used art in a way to
rebel.
Yeah, and to kind of inspire their people. And then you see that they stay behind to join a military unit and to fight the war. Kind of a harrowing look at.
That's the word I was going to use.
At the word that I told you, and my wife came along to see this one with us as well. I'm like, I'm kind of like shaken up after that. It's a documentary. It goes along as you would expect a documentary to go along. It's interesting. It's there are moments that I feel like are really tender, where these characters' vulnerabilities really show. But then you get to the end where they're basically strapping a GoPro to someone that's on a mission, being deployed somewhere, and seeing that like real footage of what they're actually doing on the front lines was pretty jarring. But I think it was a really, really good documentary. This is another one that's a 3.5 out of 5 from me.
Yeah, me too.
I thought was just a really, really interesting group of people that I think are inspiring and kind of make you think like, what would happen? How far would I go for my homeland? Would I be willing to stay here and fight for Mount Juliet, Tennessee?
Yeah. Well, and they talk about the life they once had.
Yeah.
And how that's gone, and they've, these are the choice they've made. And then there's one guy who's friends with kind of our main two artists, who's basically had to go a year and a half, 2 years without his wife or kids because they're in Poland, but he knows they're safe. I mean, it's the sacrifice you make to do this, but also to show this other side of their art, but also to show like, we talked about this in the documentary. The one way to erase a culture is you take away the artists and the musicians and the teachers, and I feel like they can never not create.
Yeah,
and I think that's what it. Whether it's the porcelain stuff or whether it's the the films they're making that they didn't think that they would ever have to make.
Yeah.
But that last scene or two and what they're telling the audience, I thought was really the most striking and most powerful, because it's not just about them in Ukraine.
Yeah.
And I thought it said a lot, especially when you see and hear those words after what you just witnessed and are, what we, are kind of eyes open seeing what they've had to endure. It's scary, but it is inspiring. Harrowing was that's the same word I was going to use. You don't think the life would be like that, but you can't. It's to fight the good fight any way you can, and they're doing both. They're being true to who they are, and picking and literally picking up a gun and sending the Russians off.
And you think about like the group that one of the artists is basically training. It's like an accountant and a graphic designer. Yeah. And
like you said, there's people that don't even know how to use guns. They don't have guns.
Civilian people that have never picked up a gun before that are
it's crazy
learning to fight, and they're the mission that we see, they're largely effective, but you wonder, like, man, that's not always going to be the case for every mission you're deployed on. And
right. And that scene, those scenes where you're talking about where a couple of their friends ended up going, I forgot what the crew was called. But that was scary. I mean, to see what they're having to go through and go back, and these bombings and shootings and the crumbling of buildings, and it's everyday life for them. I mean, you actually see them like in this beautiful field, but out in the distance it's just smoke and more explosions, and it's
and I mean, it's kind of jarring to see this in like city settings. Yeah, it's like people should just be.
It's not like it's a World War II documentary and you're watching archive footage.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, I don't know. I mean, it was breathtaking and it's brutal. And the only thing I wish we would have gotten a little bit more of their art. I don't need a full thing because obviously this is really a war documentary. But some of the art, I wish we kind of would have seen a little bit of what was before all of it happened.
Sure.
You know? But you at least kind of get to see them at work and doing what they do. But it is more of like what it stands for, not so much of like.
And it is beautiful art.
What they're, but like, how did they get into it? Like, I kind of felt like we could have maybe had a little bit of introduction of like what they did and like, oh, look at this. And I don't know. Because I thought the way that they did it and the way they kind of came to where he created and she painted, I thought was really nice. But even the guy that didn't paint anymore, I think we only saw one scene of him maybe painting. And I just thought I'd like to see a little bit of that former life before they were, I mean, essentially soldiers at this, at this stage. But but still a fantastic documentary, and I believe it won at Sundance. Yeah. So it's got some legs. I wouldn't be shocked if it's at other film festivals and maybe even get nominated, because I don't know if anything's more timely or relevant than this. And I do like the combination of war and art, and both being a way to fight your enemy that wants to try and erase what your country stands for.
Yeah. I thought there was a particular line from the film about we can't let them take the artists and the writers and all that, because that's how they take Ukraine.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was a really profound thought that came out of this film.
And it can happen in other places, not just Ukraine.
Yeah.
So
where did you land on this one?
3.5.
3.5? Yeah.
Yep. Saturday Night was 3.5. Porcelain War is 3.5. And Griffin in Summer is 3.
Okay. Let's talk about Catch a Killer. This is the one that I saw, full disclosure, that I did not think was up to par with the rest of the cast.
Yeah, me too.
Really cool cinematography. I thought the way that
had a nice look.
The film was shot was really cool. Like, it looked cool. Like there was a gloomy sort of vibe that permeated throughout the film that I think enhanced the
atmosphere. Is nice.
Yeah, but I don't know. Maybe this is me just getting hung up on too many things, but I felt like the dialogue was kind of cringeworthy at some point. Like, you have characters speaking to each other in a way that didn't feel natural to me. It's like this isn't a natural conversation given the moment. And there were some major holes in the story that I can't get into without discussing spoilers. I don't know if you want to talk spoilers on this or not, but it took me out of this one pretty early on in the film, and I never really found a groove to slip back into with this one.
Yeah, I wish it's more of like this murder crime mystery thing. Yeah. There's a serial killer on the loose, and there has to be kind of these connections, and our lead guy is a big horror movie fan, and so it's kind of related to that. I didn't mind that concept. I thought the
premise
idea
is pretty cool.
Is that something's going on, and and if you didn't watch certain movies, which I'll be honest, all the movies he referenced were probably the most famous horror movies anyone has ever seen.
Yeah.
But it sometimes it felt like, did we just assume no one else had seen these movies?
Yeah.
But I like that idea. I like the idea of like, and it deals with like streets and if it was in the movie and how certain scenes. But again, these are classic horror movies. So I feel like maybe if we kind of would have gotten a little more, we kind of would have gone down IMDb a little more.
Yeah.
And maybe it's some were like not just like, again, ones that play on TV every year.
It's like Scream, Nightmare on Elm Street, Rosemary's Baby,
Texas Chainsaw, I think. But I agree. The script is, it has issues because there are a lot, like any time the main character's ex-girlfriend is and they're talking, it just seems it's tough.
It's like bordering on, is this like Eli Roth horror comedy?
Yeah, like
is this Thanksgiving?
And can I tell you,
or are you trying to be?
This took itself way too seriously. Yes.
Yeah.
It felt like we're trying to do David Fincher stuff. And
oh
it
man,
can't.
yeah, that's a great way of
It
saying
can't.
it. Yeah,
It's not a knock on anybody, but you can't.
yeah,
So I wish there was kind of more of intentional comedy.
yeah.
I wish there were
Mhm.
things where it didn't take itself too seriously, because I think it traps itself by playing in this genre that, I mean, you've got some legendary stuff that, I mean, I don't even think the way that it plays out and the way that some of these characters have been written, it feels like everybody's miscast.
Yeah.
It feels like no one should be in their 20s. No one.
Yeah. Well, it is.
And then he's dating a high school kid who's pregnant.
Yeah. I don't
know. There's
get
so many. Yeah, there's so many things that it really takes you out of the whole thing. And even if I feel like the one thing you kind of can latch on to is like, okay, the serial killer murder mystery stuff, but there's so many things that just they don't connect.
Well, and
or they don't, like, it's not even explained. It's just, I know one of the things I thought was funny is that because he left enough voicemails on that one cop, he's his buddy at the end.
Yeah.
But that's not the case throughout the entire thing.
It's a stark contrast from what we've seen the previous hour.
Yes.
So.
And then when it does get to its conclusion, I mean, it's a pretty lame
It is, yeah. And
ending.
you know, how it's revealed that the killer is actually killing people.
How
is
they're
just-
doing it.
I'm like, this is not possible. It's a situation where I'm like, well, this is not possible without an accomplice, someone to
Right.
help this
Right.
person do
Or
this
she's
act.
he or she is killing some idiots.
Yeah, like
Flat out idiots.
I don't know how people fall for the scam that is happening.
Yeah.
And then two, there's no way that the killer could do this on their own. So, okay, maybe there's an accomplice out there, but no, it ends with a confrontation, like
Barely.
oh, you're the killer. Bang,
Hold on.
bang.
I'm going to go drive and see what this is
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
And it's like as soon as they see each other,
yeah,
the moment.
There was a really cool concept in there that I think it felt like I don't know how to describe it. Very much that like we are watching fake things happen. It's
Yes,
like
yes.
there is nothing about me that is slipping into the illusion that what I'm watching is a
Right.
real story unfolding
Yes.
the way that a good film can make you feel
Yes.
sometimes.
I feel like we're moments away from seeing a boom mic.
Exactly.
Or like a cardboard cop just fell over.
I'm hearing dialogue and I'm like, I would have said something else in that moment.
And then you
that
think,
doesn't make sense.
why are they delivering that? Like, why
Yeah,
are they saying
yeah.
it that way?
And you're not invested in the actual plot. And I think that's where
and the problem is there's so many just distractions.
yeah.
That's like, it just doesn't make sense. I will say, I do love when when they reveal how the killer is doing this.
Yeah.
It plays like when Jigsaw woke up for the first time and walked out. Like the music
Yeah.
that it does, I thought was so funny, because then like it's like, we fooled you.
Yeah.
But really what happens is you think, how the hell does that work? How does that go on for a more than a day?
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know what I did think was cool? Towards the end, one of the last people to become a victim, I think they become victims, the guy outside where he's trying to warn them.
Yeah.
So that's Joshua Leonard.
Yeah.
And I think he says it to him, but I know it's mentioned somewhere, but he was in the Blair Witch Project.
Oh, how about that?
He was one of the originals.
How about that?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. I landed on a 1.5.
Me too.
For Catch a Killer.
Me too.
You had something there. It's one of those films that I think you can watch and you can say there's something in there. This wasn't something that I downright hated.
No, I think
thought the vibes were cool. It was a very atmospheric movie. I like the love letter to the horror genre.
Yeah.
I like the premise of what the killer is doing. It just in execution, I didn't feel like it hit enough of the notes for me, and I felt like it was distracting enough to pull me out of the story.
Yes, there's too many things that have you saying, "Huh."
Exactly.
It was a squandered opportunity.
Yeah,
for sure.
Let's get into the best of the rest. These are the films that we've talked about so far that we have seen together, but I had a couple on my list that you didn't see. I watched T, which was a short film that has qualified for the 2025 Oscars.
Ooh.
Blake Rice put it together, directed, wrote it. It has Michael Gandolfini in it. He was fantastic. I kind of felt like this short was miscast as an offbeat comedy. I think the humor does hit its mark, but I caught myself kind of feeling empathy towards our main character that Gandolfini plays here as a lonely teenage boy struggling to muster the courage to talk to the girl that he likes, kind of deal. You know, I was that teenager back in the day, and Gandolfini's performance in a way is cringeworthy, not in the bad sense, but it's like he's so good at being that awkward teenage boy that I cringed because I felt like that was me. That was me back in the day.
And he's doing his job.
Very real. He was very, very good. Oh, forgive me. I can't remember the actress's name that plays the girl in it, but I thought she was really good too. And there's a scene where she's trying to take out the trash and she's kind of feeling like I'm worth more than this. And I remember feeling like that. And those are kind of feelings that make you feel empty. And that's kind of what the film drew out of me, with moments of laughter. But I will give them credit. This was something that I felt like, to be so streamlined in 12 minutes to make me feel like that is pretty impressive. You got like a limited amount of screen time to convey this raw emotion in this film. And I thought it was fantastic direction from Rice. I thought it was fantastic acting from our two main stars in this. But it's one of those things, the way I described it to you, it's one of those films that I felt like there's that one thing I can't get over.
Mm-hmm.
And so the plot of this film is this kid's trying to muster the courage. He's practicing on camera, like how he's going to talk to this girl. The girl comes out, throws some trash out, and she's out for a smoke break out behind this store. He gets stung by a hornet, and he's allergic, so he has
I think I saw the picture. His eyes are like swollen shut.
Yeah, he's swollen shut. He can't breathe, and then she's trying to figure out how to help him, and there's a heartwarming moment at the end, and everybody goes home happy, right? And I just kept thinking the whole fucking time I'm watching this, why didn't she just call 911? Why isn't she just calling 911? And I don't know how you explain that away. No one thinks it's that big
of a deal.
And just me being like the picky bastard that I am, I'm like, I gotta knock it down a peg for that. So I landed on 2.5 out of 5 with it. But to have qualified for the Oscars, I think seeing the performance from Gandolfini in this, I'm like, yeah, that tracks. It was a really, really good, heartfelt kind of movie.
Okay.
And then I saw Beatdown, which if you saw Country Brawlers from last year's festival.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I described it to you as like a fictionalized version of that story, like set in that world. Even the main character, J-Bob, his mom's name is Corky. Mm-hmm. If you'll remember Corky from Country Brawlers. This was from filmmaker Curran Sheldon, who also did the cinematography for Country Brawlers. Does Beatdown, centers around the down on his luck J-Bob. He's kind of a scam artist, a schemer, con man. Like, he's involved in a pyramid scheme, trying to get money from his family so that he can invest more into this pyramid scheme. And he comes back home and finds this tough man competition where the prize is $17,000. And his son's a fighter. His son's in the field, and then he wants to enter the field to get the money. And it's something that I don't know what it is, man, but Sheldon just has a knack for the amateur boxing world in Appalachia. It's just it's a gritty,
turf,
pulpy kind of story, but in it there is a message of wanting to get out this like stricken environment and wanting to get out and find better, but ultimately like coming home to be with your family and that being the important part. Like the family is where you need to be. The family is your home kind of deal. I thought it was a really good film. I liked Country Brawlers quite a bit. That's a documentary. This is a feature. And I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. So I was
nice.
I was pretty impressed by it. I love the world. I love like gritty Appalachia, tough, hard-nosed people trying to make it when in a place where it feels like the rest of the country has kind of forgotten about them. A lot of people like look down on the region, but I think there's a lot to respect about these circles, and Sheldon does a great job of kind of blurring the lines between, is this acting or are we really watching a tough man competition right now? So I liked it quite a bit. What were some of the other films that you want to talk about before we get on out of here today?
Well, I saw a few more. I will say that there's one that actually won at Sundance called In the Summers, and it takes place over 4 different summers between this father and his 2 daughters. And I was really impressed by it. It's, again, shout out to Dom. We were talking. It's a very visual film. There's a lot of subtlety in it as far as the relationships between the 2 sisters and their father, and the understanding as they get older. And if you are a parent, it really hits you as far as what is it like to be a part of their lives, how you can kind of get distracted with things that maybe aren't so good for you, and then when is it too late to try and get that loving feeling back? When is it lost for good? It's one that kind of sneaks up on you as each summer, and I thought it was like 4 consecutive summers, but it's not, which also adds, I think, a lot more to the overall narrative, because you realize, oh, they're not seeing him every year.
Yeah.
And so, and then the daughters themselves are also showing who they are, who they've become, really within his absence in their life. So that's called In the Summers. I really like that one. That one got 3.5 out of 5. Exhibiting Forgiveness has, it has actually a lot of good people, but Andre Holland, he's been in some stuff, but I think a lot of people probably first recognize him from Moonlight. Okay. And, but Andra Day is in it. I can never get her name right. She was nominated for King Richard as the Williams sisters' mom, and Janae Ellis Taylor.
Okay.
Hopefully I said that right, but it's really about an artist whose estranged father comes back in after cleaning up his life, wants to be back in his life, and Andre Holland, who plays Terrell, doesn't want him. It's really about being a father, because he's a father himself. It's about forgiveness. A lot of it is shown through his art. But I actually really quite liked it. Great acting, emotional, but again, it's kind of just that family. It's that family tension of someone coming in and then stirring all of those emotions back up from, why did his mother forgive him? And, I mean, it is essentially about forgiveness. And I like the ending. It's not quite the way, it doesn't go quite the way you think it will. I saw Universal Language. That is Canada's entry into for the Oscars.
Is that right?
For international film.
wanted to see Universal Language, and I didn't get a chance to.
And let me just read this real quick from Letterboxd. In Winnipeg, Nazgul and Hussein try to help a classmate recover an Iranian banknote. At the same time, a character named Matthew Rankin quits his job in Montreal to be closer to his family in Winnipeg, where he meets Masad, a tour guide who also takes care of Rankin's mother. It feels sort of like an Alexander Payne, Wes Anderson mesh. It's okay. It feels like that kind of, Winnipeg could be Nebraska.
Okay.
Everything is snowy.
Well, you're speaking my language now. That's two of my favorite filmmakers.
I know, and it's gray, and it just seems bleak. But and the humor, it's quite funny, but it's very dry.
Yeah.
which I love. And that's where I feel like the Alexander Payne and Wes Anderson really kind of shine through. But aesthetically, it's kind of got that too. I will say by the end, we kind of gets a little maybe too ambiguous, but you're kind of going along and seeing all these different characters and their actions. And I will say it does come together at the end quite nicely.
Yeah.
This is another 3.5 for me. But universal language, and it does talk about, I mean, there is stuff about kind of keeping the tradition and the culture, and it's not what I expected, but it was a pleasant surprise.
Very well.
Exhibiting Forgiveness also got 3.5. Real quick, some documentaries. Will and Harper, that's the Will Ferrell and
That's
his
gonna
buddy.
be on Netflix soon.
Friday.
Isn't it? Friday.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it. It's very, it feels very genuine. It feels very empathetic, and it's just has a heart open, its mind open to trying to understand. Basically, it is Harper Steele, who used to be a man who was eventually the head writer of SNL. Him and Will Ferrell basically got hired within like a week of each other.
Okay.
And it's about his transition, but also about Will Ferrell understanding. So they go on this road trip, and they visit all these different things, all these different places, and it's them kind of rediscovering what their friendship is now, how different it is, or how not different it is. I thought they did a great job, because I think there's a lot of stuff about trans people that I think, myself included, just don't understand. And it kind of comes from like a normal person of just like, he's my friend, he is now a she. How does this work? How do we move on? And anyway, they're both it's really good. Netflix on Friday. It's worth checking out. I ended up switching and ended up last minute deciding to see the Linda Perry doc, Let It Die Here. Had no idea she was the lead singer of Four Non-Blondes.
How about that?
Do you know what song they sing?
That
what's going on?
Yeah.
And so that's the only one I know.
About to say, if I heard it, I would.
But she's a producer. She's a writer. She scores for film. She was there in person. She did a Q&A. Raw, authentic woman.
Yeah.
It's a hell of a journey. And what I really liked about this documentary is it's about the place she's in when the cameras start rolling.
Mm-hmm.
We don't do the stereotypical, I grew up here, I did this, then I was in for it. We cover some stuff, and we see her at work, which is awesome, because the way she can just pick on things and pick up and do this and turn that and play that and capture that. She knows what the fuck she's doing. But while it's happening, she experienced stuff with her family and her mother, and she ends up getting like breast cancer. I mean, so much happens, and she's like, when she was doing the Q&A, she's like, what are the odds? She's like, you can't make she's like, none of us knew what this was going to be.
Yeah.
She's like, I thought he was just filming and we could kind of, look at it and laugh, but she's like, and then it's like, it starts to become more of a reality, and the director talks about how he wants to maybe to be this a film, and she's like, and this isn't for vanity. She's like, I don't look good in any of it.
Yeah.
But I was another 3.5 out of 5, but I was blown away because I guess I didn't really know much about her, but I love the approach of this documentary, and we are literally watching right now the life she's living and how she's dealing with it. So really liked it. Another one is The Streak. That won an audience award.
The baseball movie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, another 3.5. I didn't know anything about it. I think if maybe you were alive during that time and know about it, I don't know if it'd be as fascinating as it was to me, because it's basically cut in two. It's kind of the, hey, this is how we got on the team. This is how we got to 29 wins. Just so people understand that. And then the other half is kind of like what they're doing now.
Okay.
So they were the Salt Lake City Trappers. They're in the minor leagues, but basically they're all rookies, which means in this time, like, it's a true underdog story, but that none of them were drafted. So everybody on this team could be of any age if they're good enough. And they end up winning the most consecutive games in pro baseball, which was 27. And I think it was over 70-something years. And then in 1987, they made it to 29, and they're in Cooperstown.
How about that?
And so, and one of them goes and visits it. And I thought it was really interesting because I didn't know the story. And it's a team that apparently Bill Murray and Brian Doyle Murray were also co-owners in. And they were talking about kind of seeing him and how he got Huey Lewis and the News to come out and see. And they sing the national anthem. I thought it was neat. It is kind of sad, kind of about a dream and then it being over because none of them made it to Major League Baseball. Oh. They went up like Double A or something, but none of them ever made it to Major League. There's kind of tidbits about kind of, and it never seemed like they could please their father or got into alcohol and drugs. There's one character, they call him, I think it was Fergie, but he passed away. Sounds like health problems, and then it kind of drinking. They never really go into it, so I don't know if that was just a thing they didn't want to do, because it seemed like within the past 10 years it had happened. But I was very intrigued by it. Again, I didn't know shit about it, but I thought it was a cool sports underdog story that I just never heard of. And then I've got Bang Bang. Yeah. Tim Blake Nelson's back.
Man, he's got something every year at the festival, doesn't he?
And
we didn't see him this year.
Though.
He wasn't checking
there.
Football scores on his iPad.
No, damn it. But he, it's pretty good. I mean, he's a solid actor. I think this one is kind of more about the story itself and this balance, because it's also he's kind of a downbeat dad, but he needs to watch his grandson because his daughter is trying to get a new job. And anyway, so he's going to try and teach him to box because he had a twin brother. They were kind of famous around the area boxers. But there's also, it seems like a lot of focus is on the grandson and him training. And then it kind of just switches. It felt to me out of nowhere on about the twin brother. So some things just felt unresolved or not fully kind of depicted. But the acting's good. I mean, it's a gritty kind of boxing drama, at least most of the time. But I gave that one 2.5 out of 5. And then there is another one that's an audience award member. Bob Trevino likes it. Has John Leguizamo in it. This one,
I love me some John Leguizamo.
He's good at it. This is definitely more of a dramatic role, but there is an actress who plays Lily Trevino, who this is based on a true story directed by Tracy Lehman, and it's basically about this girl, Lily Trevino, her father is not the greatest. And he's played by French Stewart. I didn't even recognize. I had no idea.
Well, French Stewart was at the festival,
French
wasn't
Stewart.
he?
Yes,
there was a red carpet availability.
But I guess I haven't seen him since Third Rock from the Sun.
Yeah, maybe
but
not.
I will tell you, I had no idea. He wasn't even squinting. Okay, I had no idea. But anyway, he's basically a father that's all about him and doesn't pay for her, and basically it's like he's just spending most of his time trying to get a girlfriend or a wife, and anything that happens, he doesn't take accountability and blames his daughter. So his daughter is always kind of the caretaker, putting everyone else ahead of her, and, never kind of taking the time for herself, always apologizing. And Barbie Ferreira plays Lily Trevino. She's great. John Leguizamo's great. And basically her and her dad quit talking. And she's trying to get a hold of him. And so she goes on Facebook and becomes friends with a Bob Trevino, but it's not her father. It's another Bob Trevino who John Leguizamo plays. And it's really about two strangers just needing someone.
Yeah.
And it's done really well. It's a bit melodramatic. It is predictable. I mean, I think you kind of know where that story's going, but the acting, I think, is really what takes kind of the forefront of everything.
I want to
see
acting. This one, yeah.
And so I gave it 3 out of 5. It's still good. I have a little bit of issue with the ending, and I think that's where it really kind of tries to kind of pull on the heartstrings, and I'm not sure. I don't know. It feels a bit forced and kind of unnecessary, but overall, good movie. The last one I've got is Clone Cops. Clone Cops is the one thing that we had a problem with on Catch a Killer is it took itself too seriously.
Yeah.
Clone Cops does not. It's like a show where the characters are in the show, but it ends up being like this alternate futuristic reality. And so, but there's clone cops, and then there's a secret to it all, which I don't really think it's much of a mystery, but it's shot like very retro. Some performances are better than others. It's very outlandish. It's pretty absurd. I gave it 2.5 out of 5 only because I do feel like that they're having fun with it. It is sort of a fun movie, especially in the film festival vibe of it all, kind of like we were talking about for Griffin In Summer. If this came out in 3,000 theaters, I would be like, I don't know how this happened. But it has its fun. It's kind of like the sci-fi comedy. It is what it is. It does seem more self-aware, and sometimes it's intentionally funny. So yeah, I gave it 2.5 out of 5. Apparently, the filmmakers were there because I think they're from Tennessee, and they talked about how they have a script for the second and third one.
How about that?
I'll probably skip those, but good for them. Good for them.
We're an hour and 21 minutes in.
All right, that covered it.
I
had to kind of hit some of mine because I was on a roll.
I'm going to watch Clone Cops tonight. It'll be in my recap piece tomorrow.
There you go. So you can give your side of it. It's not bad, but it's
returning to our thoughts on the festival as a whole to wrap this up. After talking about all of these films, talking about our experiences with the Nashville Film Festival team and the venues, the whole overall experience of it, I feel like this was a pretty good year for the Nashville Film Festival, and for it to be in our own backyard is a pretty cool thing. But any parting thoughts on the festival as a whole?
I am pleasantly surprised by this year.
Yeah.
I didn't quite know what to expect. I think there's always kind of some titles that we've talked about that either already have buzz coming into the festival because they've been winning other stuff, or they premiered at Sundance, or they just came from TIFF or whatever. But I was pleasantly surprised. I don't remember having this many 3.5 to 4 that I can. Oh my God. Can I do something real quick?
What?
Probably my favorite of the whole festival, Memoir of a Snail.
Oh, yeah.
It's a great animated movie. It's an Australian animated movie that has Eric Bana, Jackie Weaver, Sarah Snook from Succession. It's really about these two siblings. Their father dies. They get split up. It's heartbreaking. It's heartwarming. It shows that kind of perseverance and fighting spirit. Kind of feels like Tim Burton could have animated it.
Oh, man.
It's dark, but the animation is so excellent, and in the way that it does, and there's a whole snail thing going on, but the metaphor of what this film is showing us and standing for is really good, and I feel like it's close, but that could be my favorite of the whole festival. Yeah. Sorry to have to cram that in, but Memoir of a Snail, one of the best animated movies of the year.
Do we think this is going to get a release somewhere? Because those are some names attached to it. That style is popular. You can see wanting to get it in front of people.
I think IFC did it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I could see that kind of showing and getting at least like New York and LA, and then you can stream. You know what I mean, like VOD. But be on the lookout for that one, because I had heard some great stuff coming into this about it, but the animation again is fantastic, and it looks very different, but it so fits the tone and the atmosphere that the filmmakers were creating. But yeah, it's got a lot of good names, a lot of great voice acting, and it's really beautiful on just, like I said, just not only with siblings, but just that feeling of, in some form or fashion, being in a cage and needing to be set free.
Well, there you have it. That is
yes, I love the film festival. Great job this year. I look forward to next year. It's always kind of crazy on what kind of makes it in, and then obviously the discoveries we find.
Yeah, sure. All right, that's going to do it. I've got a piece up on SoBrosNetwork.com right now chronicling a day at the Nashville Film Festival. I've got a piece dropping tomorrow morning where I'm actually reviewing the films that we've already actually talked about. So actually, now that I say that out loud, if you've listened to this podcast, I don't think you need to read that one. But nonetheless, it's up there, SoBrosNetwork.com. Rate, review, subscribe to the Vick Flicks podcast. Wherever you take in your podcast, we are out in these internet streets, baby. For Mr. Big Shot, Brandon Vick, I'm Big Natural Stoney Keeley. And until next time, you stay classy, Nashville movie goers.
Sounds good.